When you are presented with insurmountable odds, your mind can come up with 10,000 scenarios. I don't need you to solve that. And that's why I tell my leadership team, I don't need you to solve that. What is the next decision? It is the small decisions in life that I think you make along the way that nobody sees, by the way. Those decisions are what make the big impact when people are now seeing you on stage. When they're seeing you in a leadership position, you could go Google it and you're going to see 15 articles on why this new generation coming up is a bunch of losers. And these new people that want to be managers, they have bad work ethics and they don't show up and they don't care. They just reject the way businesses used to run. And they expect a business and an owner that cares about them, who's involved in the business, who knows what they're talking about, and wants to build a meritocracy around them to be successful. I actually have found they love that type of environment.
Today, our topic is going to be based around the operational strategies that you used to scale Sky Zone and now Cloudbound. And for those who don't know, Sky Zone, I'm going to let you fill everybody in on that, Josh, and then I'm going to ask you about your origin story because it's very interesting. I can't wait for you to start sharing with us.
Happy to. I think understanding where people come from, it really tells the story of what their future, and then you can duplicate it. So I'll start with just some background on Sky Zone, right? So these are obviously franchise and owned and operated, huge 30,000 square foot family entertainment centers. And at the end of the day, the entire business, which I fell in love with, is designed to make a kid happy and to fill a need, get them off an iPad, get them off a gaming system, and get them to have unstructured active play. And when you got a business and a franchise that you're proud of and you feel like it's impactful, and by the way, you've got daughters, and so you can see through their eyes what it does for them, and then you hope you can duplicate that for other families. You know, I started that business as a franchise operator in 2017, and I just leaned into it because I believed in the mission. I understood what it meant for families. I knew how important a birthday party was, and that it only comes around once a year, and you hope as a parent that you're doing everything you can to plant memories in their lives that they can look back on. And so I knew that this is a business that's at those kind of critical moments in kids' lives. But then I could take everything I had learned in my prior career as an executive and apply it to professionalize and execute at a really high level, something that normally might not be viewed as a top tier franchise. And so that was really fun to kind of bring that level of execution to a family entertainment center. So love to jump into that and dig in, but we can definitely start with that origin story.
Yeah, absolutely. Tell us how you got to doing what you're doing.
I'll go back and here's what's really interesting. I don't think I ever was meant to be or believe or aspire to be a business owner or even an executive. If I go back far, I remember being in grade school and I was good at athletics. My parents saw that. I played soccer, by the way. That was my sport. That was my love, right? And I got to a certain age where my parents sat me down and said, look, you can either get a job and start making money, paying for your insurance and doing all these things. They could tell I was on that tipping point between focused on being elite or this is a hobby. And they said, or you can be an elite athlete, which means you give up your summers to go to summer camps, to elite camps. You give up sacrifices during the week to go to extra practices. You go to privates. Like there was this decision as a young person I was presented with, and I weighed it. And I said, I'd love to focus on being an athlete. And by the way, I think my dad did a really good job of saying that it wasn't just you want to be an athlete so you don't have to work. It was you want to be an athlete so that you can focus on learning and being elite, right? Learn from the team captain, go to extra practices. We're going to pay as a family to send you to camps. And so there was a measure of responsibility that even as a young person, immediately I knew this is on my shoulders. I'm making the choice. My family's going to sacrifice. So I really respected that looking back. But that was my goal, Brien. I wanted to be an athlete, and I wanted to I had the privilege to go to Ohio State University on a scholarship. I had a privilege to win a Big Ten championship, to be around elite athletes. And even there, though, my job was to learn from the upperclassmen, pay attention to the team captain, see who was the best. And I constantly was kind of challenging myself. If I wasn't going to play sports after that, I wanted to go to the MLS and all of that. My goal was to coach. I just wanted to be around that environment where you're constantly pushing to be better every single day. And that was my aspiration. And against Penn State, from behind, not the best situation, but I got taken out. I was a forward. My job was to score, and I had a defender that took me out and tore my MCL. And that was a really difficult, situation I went through. I rehabbed. So if you knew me, bring on the challenge, right? Whatever it takes, I'm going to rehab. I'll do it. I'll go through the process. And in a practice, no fans, no glory, nobody else around on accident after I came back from rehabbing. I was the I was the leading scorer in preseason when I came back because I wanted to earn my job. I wanted to prove that I was back from this injury. My teammate tore my MCL again. And I will tell you, I got called in. So I'm in a wheelchair. I'm already in a vulnerable position, like mentally, right? This is hard what I've gone through now. I got pulled into a meeting with the head coach, the assistant coach, and in the room is a representative from the NCAA. And immediately I knew that's not a good scenario. And, they shared with me, and even though they tried to do it with kid gloves and make sure they were sensitive to it, in the end, what it meant is that I was now a liability for the NCAA. And that if I got injured again, that would be a concern for them. And they essentially shared with me that I had a choice. I could continue and there'd be some risks and some concerns, or the preference was to revoke my eligibility. They would give Ohio State back a scholarship that Ohio State could then distribute to other teammates and bless that among them. But what it meant for me is that my career was done. They no longer wanted to support me rehabbing and potentially having a third injury based on the severity of the second injury that I got. And I mean, if you think about this for a second, I had worked everything in my life for this mission. I had given up. I didn't go to prom. I went to, soccer tournaments. I played every night that I possibly could. This was what my passion, my life was. And in one meeting, all my friends were athletes. All my classes were built around traveling as a D1 athlete. That all my relationships were around it. And in one meeting, I lost everything. All my friends were no longer part of my universe. I was no longer a student athlete. I was just a student at that point. I hadn't invested in other friendships outside of athletes. So now they're traveling on the weekend. I'm no longer with them. It was, in every way I could describe it, one of the darkest couple days of my life. I hated God. I hated NCAA. I hated why would I be allowed to be great at something, to be driven, to be focused, if the answer is just that it's going to be taken away? And I'll tell you, when you're in a hard moment like that, um, people really don't understand unless you've been through it what it means to lose something that you are truly passionate about. I could have gone one of two ways. I could have gone the route in that moment that I'm just going to be a complete failure for the rest of my life. And I think that was a valid outcome that might have come from that. Or I was going to find a way to climb out of this hole. Um, but it took me 2, 3 days to get to the strength to pick up the phone and call one or two people that I viewed as mentors. And I said, look, I'm in a dark place. I don't know how to get out of this on my own. Everything I've done was to be an elite athlete, and I didn't choose to walk away. It was taken from me. And I don't know how to get out of this. And I think the best advice they gave, and by the way, it changed the trajectory of my life, is they said, you think, Josh, that you've lost the ability to be an athlete. You just need to find a new sport. And I literally on the phone, I remember sitting there going, I just need a new sport. You're telling me I can, like, all the principles, everything I learned as an athlete, like how to watch other people, how to lose properly and learn and get better the next day, how to be driven when nobody's watching, like all of those things I learned as an athlete, you're telling me. And so their advice was the closest thing that would align, you got to go into business. You have to find a way to become a business person. And that could be a manager in business, that could be an executive in business, that could be an entrepreneur. We don't know what that looks like for you, but we think business is your sport. And so that to me was some of the best advice in that moment. They didn't know what the end picture looked like, but they knew the outside of the frame said, go find a new sport. And I think when people go through tragedy, that's maybe a really good way to kind of approach maybe a situation that they're in, is you don't know what the end picture is going to look like, and you might not know how to even dig out on your own. But if you can take the core principles of what you loved and just reframe it and figure out, and maybe for me it was business, maybe for somebody else it's being a homemaker, maybe for somebody else, right, it's helping work in philanthropy or doing something impactful. But take what you learned, what you love, and reframe that picture. I had the privilege to then repivot, and I went to the Fisher College of Business at Ohio State. I found my sport. I fell in love with marketing. I went to logistics classes in the Fisher College of Business. I would go into the sales classes. I would learn from the professors. We would do workshops to figure out, how do you start a business? What makes a business fail? How do you calculate your P&L to even know how you're doing as a business owner? And for the remainder of my time at Ohio State, I figured out, like, this is my sport. And I think my favorite part of it is I can be a competitor. I can be in an environment where I can be rewarded for the effort and the work that I'm doing. And that's what I was really hungering and looking for as an athlete, is I want to work hard. I don't care about trophies. I don't care about accolades, but I want to lay my head down at night knowing that I moved something forward, and it's my movement is what's progressing. And so that was really where I think my origin kind of started. I got the opportunity to get recruited by JP Morgan Chase. What a crucible. If I can say anything great about a company, I would lay praise and heap it upon JP Morgan Chase. 16 years there. I had some of the best mentors, Nikki Hartung, Mark Allen. And I don't mean that they coddled or were easy. These were leaders that I think early on in my career really focused on behavior. And they said, look, I don't care your age, Josh. I don't care if you've been here for a day. I don't care if you've been here for 10 years. It's a meritocracy. And as soon as I realized it was a meritocracy, which meant that if I can lean in and I can focus and I can learn from those that are really great, learn to walk like them, learn to talk like them, prep my meetings like them, present things like them, debrief like them, then that meant that I could one day be like them. And so again, I took my athlete principles into JP Morgan Chase. And I just leaned into who's great, who's the best person in the room at this. Great. I'm going to learn from them. I'm going to watch what they do. But as a competitor, just give me a little bit of time, baby. I'm going to be as good, if not better than them within a very short period of time. And I really pushed myself. And I think the ability of JP Morgan Chase under Jamie Dimon, obviously through the leaders that then filtered down to me, to reward performance, to have authentic conversations when somebody's not performing well, which, by the way, there was situations where I was not performing well. They were clear. They were honest. They told me exactly what I needed to fix. And then there was no ego there. It was just go get it done, Josh. And then it was, as I think it should be in business, it was on me to then take that responsibility and then go run with it. And so I could not say better things about. And what I learned at JP Morgan Chase, and I'll share with this, I didn't just learn how to lead people. I didn't just learn how to show up. I didn't learn how to, be in charge of a pretty large, I was executive director of banking when I left the firm. It wasn't just learn how to run an organization. They taught me how to scale. I was enabled and taught by great mentors how to build something at scale. And that usually means to learn how to duplicate yourself, figure out a process, get really good at it yourself. And then the true test of a leader is, can you now duplicate yourself? And that is such an inflection point where most entrepreneurs, and I think most executives, really struggle. It's the ability to then duplicate. It's to find that other person within the firm that can become your right-hand person. And I think JP Morgan really impressed that upon me. I think, Brien, I would have loved to continue working there. I would have absolutely continued to learn. But I had a daughter, and she was 10 months old. And we found out that she was diagnosed with cancer. And I will tell you, there is no book, there is no Grey's Anatomy episode, there's no conversation you have with a friend that gives you any perspective to prepare for a moment like that. For somebody to sit in a room, and by the way, it wasn't just your daughter's diagnosed with cancer, let's come up with a plan. It was your daughter's diagnosed with cancer. You may not leave the hospital from this point forward. Your entire life has changed. Her life needs to be we need to try to save her life tomorrow with open brain surgery. We are flying the doctors in overnight. We're prepping. and she's going to be in open brain surgery tomorrow. You need to prepare. And they pulled my wife and I to the side and said, you're going to get one opportunity to see your daughter. Figure out what you're going to say. How do you do that? How do you prepare for a moment like that? And what I would kind of share is I don't think you prepare for a moment like that. I think you rely on the moments you've experienced that prepare you for a moment like that. See, I had already lost and been through a dark moment at Ohio State when I lost the privilege to do what I wanted, which was to be an athlete. And I had to, in that moment, dig myself out and find a new sport. And all of that, I think, going through that mini crucible prepared me for that moment when I was sitting at Rady Children's Hospital with my wife next to me, and the doctor said, you're going to get one chance to talk to your daughter, figure out what you're going to say, and then we're going to go try to save her life. How do you do that? Well, you do that by saying, I've been through this, honey. You lean on me. I got it. We're going to take it, whatever the cost is, whatever the doctors say the next 12 months is going to be, whatever the burden is they're going to put on us. I don't need you to worry about that, honey. I'm taking it on my shoulders. Let's do one thing. Let's get the conversation right with Bryn, and let's say the right thing to her for our last opportunity to do it. Let's get that right. And I think that is probably one of the most impactful things as a leader. You're always, I don't know what tomorrow is going to bring you. You might have a lawsuit at your firm. You might have your best employee who quits tomorrow. You might have some terrible tragedy, or you might just have the annoyance of another day on the job that just doesn't go the way you want. And I think if you can challenge yourself to say, who cares about the future? Get the next thing right. For me in that moment, the next thing right was get the conversation right with your daughter. Say the prayer, have the right conversation, make sure your wife knows that you're going to be the strong, person that you are asked to as the husband and the father in that situation. Get that right. Everything else, just make a commitment in your mind that you'll figure the rest out. And I think sometimes analysis paralysis is what people refer to it. And, all these different technical terms that nobody can make a decision. I think that's completely false. I think the challenge is they don't know how to make the next decision. And I think that is such a critical point for executives that when you are presented with insurmountable odds, your mind can come up with 10,000 scenarios. I don't need you to solve that. And that's why I tell my leadership team, I don't need you to solve that. What is the next decision? And whatever the next decision is, still your soul, figure it out, understand your presence and how you're going to handle it, and go get that next decision right. And I think when you stack those wins, one after the other, of the right decisions, and you step back, you've now taken back control over this, I think, insurmountable kind of challenge. That was a tough time, though. So as you can imagine, dealing with that situation through Brien, and I'll share with you, Brien, and for the audience, fast forward 12 months, we got the diagnosis of no evidence of disease. Okay. She was not cancer free, but NED, those three letters in the cancer world for parents that know on this phone or on this call listening, NED is like, let's throw a party, baby. So that meant no active cancer cells found in her body. She was in a great place 12 months later. And so I had a conversation with my wife, and I said, look, I poured everything into JP Morgan Chase. And by the way, I tried to carry my responsibilities and still worked my job every single day at JP Morgan. And by the way, another compliment to my executives that were over me, they accommodated and allowed me to try to balance both of those lives. But I will share with you, at the end of that battle after a year, I physically should have died. There was no way I should have been able to make it through that 12 months doing what I did as an executive, trying to pour into my team and still be a great leader within the firm, and then give everything to my daughter, right? I didn't sleep. I gave everything because that's what I needed to do. But I could tell personally that really broke my heart, because I didn't like being in front of my team and being a half measure and not being completely prepared and not having everything ready. As an athlete and as somebody who likes to be good at my job, I could tell for that battle that I was not a great JP Morgan executive leading my team. And that really hurt me. And at the same time, I needed to give my daughter 100%. And anytime I wasn't with her, and so that's the next thing I think I would share with a lot of leaders is it's very difficult to go vanilla right down the center. I've always found it impactful that if you're going to be a lead at something and be really great for your team can tell when your heart isn't in it. Your team can tell when your time and attention, and even if that's not your fault. And so at the end of that year, I go on a walk with my wife around the neighborhood. And I said, honey, I think I'm doing a great job at JP Morgan Chase to the level that I know that I'm capable of. And I don't want to ever be in a situation with Bryn that her cancer comes back, because it could. It's a very high probability that her cancer could come back, or there could be some really big complications, even though she was NED. And so I said, honey, I don't want to be in a position where I'm not doing a great job at JP Morgan Chase and that her cancer comes back and I have to be in this situation. I said, so would you trust me? Would, if I took my time, my talent, my treasure, and I started to look at other opportunities, do I have your support and blessing that I'll do the right thing for the family? I'm not going to just jump ship into something that I'm not smart about and intentional and thoughtful, but would you support if I wanted to be an entrepreneur and try? And to her credit, she said, absolutely. Do the research, do what you need to, but let's do the right thing for our family. So we can jump into Sky Zone and all that fun stuff, but I'll pause there for a second. But that is the authentic history that I think when people see success, they forget about. It is the small decisions in life that I think you make along the way that nobody sees, by the way. There was no trophies, there was no accolades, there was no praise for these decisions that I made in all these, I think, really dark periods that are challenging. But those decisions are what make the big impact when people are now seeing you on stage, when they're seeing you in a leadership position. And that's what I think that gives you the credibility. And so I love that I had to go through those challenges, not then, but now. And I love that it built a crucible of me being able to look back on that and lean on those experiences, because it's really enabled my team to kind of lean on that strength. So that's kind of my origin story.
Yeah, I love that's an incredible story. And I mean, I can't imagine going through what you did over that period when your daughter was being treated and making her comeback and her recovery. That like you said, you thought maybe based after that year, you should have been dead
Yeah.
of all the stress and the, kind of like Atlas carrying your world on your shoulders, man. It's an incredible story, but, and it's definitely, obviously it has led to the way that you manage not just your franchises at Sky Zone, but also how you conduct business as president of Sky Zone and Cloudbound, because, and I've got questions I definitely want to dive in on, basically how you've enacted not just your experience and your skills, but the information at hand to grow a business in the way that you have and to grow those franchises the way that you have. What are, I guess, and I kind of want to start with this because you mentioned a couple different times in how you build a team.
Yep.
And how you, not just how you build it or structure it, but how you treat them and how you train them, how you, make sure they are part of the team and not just employees collecting a paycheck. So maybe that's a good place to start. Can you help us understand some of the strategies behind building your team and, in your experience, how that worked at Sky Zone and then taking it to scale?
I love it. Let's use a real use case. So my first franchise was Sky Zone in San Diego. And this was, I would say, an average to underperforming park. They did not have a real connection. It was a very sustaining little franchise that was kind of on an island. And I kind of took and by the way, I think sometimes as a leader, you got to take your ego, take your title, and remind yourself that your title and your ego is only as good as the people underneath you. Okay. I'm coming from JP Morgan Chase, executive director of banking, all kinds of titles, awards, accolades. When I took over my first franchise, I took off the three-piece suit, I put it in the closet, I got out the employee uniform of Sky Zone, and I took over as the general manager of Sky Zone. I did not walk in with a spreadsheet and a mandate. I did not tell the team, I'm here to fix this location. You guys are average and ordinary, and I'm going to bring all my expertise from my big firm, and we're going to fix this. I didn't tell them anything. They had never seen me at JP Morgan Chase. They didn't see me in a three-piece suit before. I walked in, introduced myself. I'm the owner. I'm excited, but I'm going to do everything shoulder to shoulder. And I think that is the first key. If you want to build a culture, you don't build a culture, you build it through you yourself. And so that's, I would say, the first principle. And when I say shoulder to shoulder, I don't mean in meetings. I meant I learned how to fix a toilet. I learned how to sell a birthday party to a parent. I learned what does somebody give us a 5-star review for, and why do we earn a 1-star review? And by the way, when you get a 1-star review, let me share with you, we earned it. And so I learned because I was in the park. I was the first one there. I was there as long as I needed to be, and I wanted to be a part of everything. I learned every position within that franchise, from birthday parties to the front desk, maintenance, cleaning, sales, all of those. And what I did is I made a commitment that my presence was going to be the example that I wanted people to aspire to. I wasn't going to tell them how to behave necessarily. I wasn't going to change their behavior by giving them an SOP and saying, here's the new way that a party host kind of runs. I decided early on, I'm going to run each of these positions, and I'm simply going to let the team see me do it. And what I started to notice, and if you've ever demonstrated or done this for other owners or executives, what I started to notice is the team started to talk. In this team, I would hear the whispers, behind my back of like, wow, like he didn't that's not how I thought he would handle that. Or like, did you see him running birthday parties last Tuesday? Like, I don't what's he doing? And so what I started to notice is you start going into this phase of people questioning you. Is this real? Does he really do shoulder to shoulder? Because they don't believe it yet. They're not fully bought in that this is actually how. But if you can break through that to where they go, this isn't just a facade, he literally is going to demonstrate it. That, in my opinion, is now the first opportunity where you can now start coaching them, because they weren't ready prior to that. They didn't trust me. They didn't think I had the credibility. And if I did start coaching them, they would say, he doesn't know how to do a birthday party. How's he going to tell us what we're supposed to do? And so that's, I think, the first thing is shoulder to shoulder means shoulder to shoulder in my universe. It means you do not tell somebody to do something if you have not done it yourself. And by the way, done it yourself better than anybody else in the organization. And so that's the second thing that I would kind of share as a framework, that if you want to change the culture, you better be the best person in your business at whatever it is that you do. You sell nuts and bolts, you better be the best person selling nuts and bolts. Your company does logistics, you better know how to get those trucks in the right location on time with the best logistics and the best cost for every single delivery. And I know there's leaders and owners that say, but that's not my job. I know it's not your job later. It is your job when you want to build culture. And so that's what I kind of challenge my team with, is that you are here to lead from the front. You're here to have shoulder to shoulder coaching, but you better be the best one at every single thing before you start coaching somebody else. And so I think that's how you really, really impact a culture in somewhere versus walking in with a spreadsheet and a mandate and saying, follow me, I bought the business, so I'm in charge now.
When you walk into, insert small local business name here, even larger businesses, when you walk in and you receive a certain level of service that is nowhere near what you would expect or what any reasonable human would like to have, that's when you know, at least to me, that's when there's a culture problem at that specific business, and B, likely a leader or management that doesn't get it or doesn't care. And I might be more in tune to that just because I'm a business owner and entrepreneur. I understand. I work with local businesses. I get that. And I love great service, but people know it, whether subconsciously or consciously, you know it if that is not present there. And then the businesses that do have that, they have the best employees who love their jobs, and it's a complete reflection upon the leadership, the training, and the culture that they have at their business. So I think even if people don't really recognize it, you can walk into a business and you can understand pretty quickly whether or not that place has that or not.
I could not agree more, but let me even lean into that conversation, right? I would go to businesses. I'll give you an example. CC's Pizza, right? They got a lot of locations across the US. You walk in and they do this standard greeting, hi, welcome to CC's, right? I think intentionally, and I think probably in a boardroom, there was probably great aspirations behind that. which is like we should be greeting our guests when they walk in. That's going to make it's going to make people feel unique and special. Except the problem is what you realize is that it's staffed by 16-year-olds. The manager isn't present. They aren't getting the coaching necessary. And what it becomes is a requirement, which means that a team that is uninspired and doesn't really care does the bare minimum when you require them to do something. So something that probably was intended to be experiential and wonderful, actually I resent when I walk in as a consumer because I know it's fake. And there is, and what I would say about leaning into what you just said, it's the fake part of it. Any business that I'm in, most of these are small businesses, right? We have to give great service. We have to even give what I would consider a great experience so that the parent feels really great about it. And if you do not have the right culture, so in other words, have the right manager that has a servant leadership mindset that shoulder to shoulder teaches, is ingrained with the team, cares about them, and you expect that team to now give great service, what you're really expecting is you're expecting to train them to be fake. Now, one of two things: either lean into that and say, our team's going to be fake and we're going to lean into it and we're going to teach them to be fake, or reject that and say, we are not going to teach them to do anything fake. We are going to get them to love working here. We're going to build a culture. They have the best dang GM who cares about them, who drives them, who praises them, who gives them feedback. And by the way, that doesn't mean that it's a fake babysitting environment. You can still hold people accountable. You can still expect a standard of excellence. But if you've got an environment where people love working for that general manager, I don't mean the district manager who pops in once a month or the regional. That's not what matters. What matters to your team is their direct manager. And whatever your small business is, think that mentality, right? In mine, it's usually the general manager. If my team loves my general manager, they just have to bump into a customer and they come across as friendly. It just happens by accident because they're happy when they showed up for their shift. They didn't call out. They didn't chew out their friend. They're helping each other. And so when that customer interaction happens, you're already more likely to get a great reaction from your team member. And all you have to do in that moment is just equip them with what to say. See, I don't have to give them a fake structure. I just have to equip them on what to say. They were already happy. They were already in a good mood. They were already feeling supported by their manager. And if I just equip the script, now that comes across as a really, really good experience for the customers. Can I add one more thing on this idea of giving really great service?
You
I
bet.
also think one of the biggest challenges is a bad apple on the team. And you think about it as a manager, I really want to give great service. I want to get 5-star reviews. Do you really think, Josh, having one bad apple on a team of 50 people, do you really think it affects that? I would say the logic would tell you no, it's 1 in 50. That's not a big deal. I think you're missing the point. As soon as a leader, you allow a sub-performing team member with a bad attitude and a bad performance to persist on your team, what you've told the team is that you don't care. But it's not about me, Josh. That person's not a good employee. No, you're not a good manager. You either don't have the managerial courage to exit that person from your firm, or you do not have the skill set to go shoulder to shoulder to fix the gap. But I see that as a management massive gap in execution, not a problem with that one employee. And I will tell you, every new franchise location, I've got 10 locations across 5 different states. Every single one, the GM struggles with this concept. They immediately want to sit me down as a new owner, and they immediately want to tell me who the problems are and that we might need to get rid of these people. And I smile. I'm not, look, I didn't train that GM. I just bought this location, okay? So it's not their fault. But what I hear in that narrative is that you're not confident enough as a manager to fix the problem. So you want me to fix that problem. Now I can either write off that GM, or I can now look at myself and say, am I good enough to teach this GM how to overcome this huge gap in there? Because I'm telling you, the 49 employees can't stand that one employee. And every day they walk in and that one bad apple is talking trash about other employees, cursing a customer out behind their back as soon as the customer leaves, calling out when everybody else needs coverage. The other 49 employees, they're not dumb. They know that person's a problem, and they know they work for a manager that doesn't have the courage to fix it. You want to talk about destroying your culture, that is a huge gap. It is one of the first things I fix in a park, right? And so I either choose in that moment, look, this manager is going to need a lot of hand holding. I might need to shoulder to shoulder show them how to do this, but we are going to fix this problem and we are going to eliminate these bad apples inside the park. That's really, really critical with these new locations when you take over. Now, that does not mean I come in and fire people one day on the job. Remember, I don't see the problem as that one bad apple. I see the problem is that the manager is struggling with managerial courage. It means that on day one, I need to lean into this manager's cup. I got to pour from my cup into his cup and help him figure or her figure this out. Because if I don't, what's going to happen is now all the team is going to say, not that the GM is okay with that one bad apple. The rest of the team is going to say, our new owner is also okay with that one bad apple. See, I have to help the team understand that I reject that. My presence in this business now requires that we're going to have an environment with top performers where it's a meritocracy and we don't accept that low standard inside of our team. And so I lean into the GM in that scenario.
Yeah, well, and I feel like, as a reflection on servant leadership, and tell me if you agree, but it's show, don't tell, right? Like, don't come in and tell me what to do and tell me to do this and tell me to, this is the problem, go fix it. It's let me show you. Even if it's not in so many words, it's literally, like you said, shoulder to shoulder. Let me show you why the 49 good employees and people that want to be here do not like the one employee.
Yep.
Right. And then, so kind of help me unpack that a little bit, especially in leaning into that term servant leadership, because I know we've used that and I think you've done a great job of explaining it, but maybe more directly, is that kind of the best way to describe servant leadership and how a business owner, even a manager at a business, can go in? For those of you out there listening who might be in these positions, there's a whole lot of people problems that need solving that it is hard to get the courage to do. So can you kind of help me unpack that as it pertains to the servant leadership side of this?
Yeah, I think I make a conscious effort to show up differently, probably than what they were exposed to in the past. And by the way, I don't disparage or feel bad or talk bad about any of the people that I came in after them, right? What I say to my team is my way's not better and it's not worse. It just might be different. The way I carry myself, my approach to how we're going to run this business, I'm going to show up differently than what you probably have felt in the past. I don't need you to get excited about that, and I don't need you to get upset about that. Just understand I show up differently. And what I tell my team is I'm going to be shoulder to shoulder, and we are not going to run this business from the top down. I am always comfortable making decisions, but I will never make decisions without the team being involved in it. I want your opinion. I want your advice. I want your expertise. I want to know it, but you're never going to sit there saying things are swept under the rug and Josh doesn't care. He's always going to come with a purposeful presence, right? And so define servant leadership and how we, make a difference on this. I think servant leadership shows itself when you're tested, right? Minor franchise businesses, we're very busy on the weekends, right? And so you could say, well, I'm a Monday through Friday guy. That's where I'm really effective with my team. Well, Monday through Friday is not when my team is expected to perform, which means I need to perform when my team needs to perform. So I rewired. Again, I came from JP Morgan Chase Monday through Friday. I realized my franchise businesses really execute Friday through Sunday when the customers are coming. So when the real pressure is tested and the team has hundreds of customers in the business, decisions being made, some are upset, somewhat checked out, there's all these different scenarios. Am I present or am I absent? And so what I decided early on is I was going to be there. I had a conversation with my wife and said, look, I need permission. I'm going to be at the business on Saturday and Sunday. Here's the times. Here's when it's busy. I want to be there with them. And so that's, I think, also a critical step of being a leader is that when your team is put in pressure tested environments, Are they left on their own to figure out those situations, or can you be that steady rock in that moment? Because when people start to trust that you're standing next to them in those moments, then that trust translates over the other 7 days, right? When I come to them on Tuesday, I don't need to prove myself anymore. I was there on Saturday. When they're joking about something on a Wednesday, they're like, dude, this is nothing. Did you see Josh on Saturday? Like, he knocked out like 5 things. It was awesome. I don't even have to start building that credibility because I chose to be there in those, critical times. That's where I think you earn a lot of that, credibility. I can't be everywhere all the time in all of my franchise businesses, but I can be intentional to be there and be different when they're under pressure. And so I think each entrepreneur or leader or person who's taking away a couple tidbits on this, figure out where that pressure test moment is for your team. Is it a board meeting coming up on a Tuesday? Is it a Friday morning is when we have our vendor meeting where they're difficult with us? Whatever your team is being tested on a weekly basis, make sure you're present for that and be there to stand in and support your team. I think you build so much credibility in moments like that.
How do you help, like in your case, your managers, the boots on the ground? And like you said, you can't be at all your locations at all the proper times. It's just impossible. How do you make sure that your leadership team that is boots on the ground, for lack of a better term, how do you make sure that they are the right person to follow what you build?
So depending on the organization, different variations of this I think you could implement. I'll share with you what I did early on. I wanted to reward merit. I don't really care about gender, tenure, how long you've worked in the organization, politics, religion, all the stuff that I think blurs the lines. I wanted merit to be part of my organization. So let me share with you what I did, and I think this can be duplicated in other settings. There's 6 different job titles within each of my franchise locations, and you can have different job titles within your organization as well. We made a concerted, the leadership team, we talked this through. I got their buy-in. I said, I need you to trust me up front. I think I'll prove myself to you. And then I think we'll be able to grow this. We decided that we would never post an upper level position within the organization. And that scared them to death. I said, because we are going to, as leaders, we are going to mentor, we're going to develop, and part of your job responsibility is to find your replacement and mentor the next generation of leaders. And what that meant is that the lower 3 job titles, we can post and we can hire for and we can interview candidates. But from that point forward, every single person within my organization, all the way from assistant general manager, future general managers, district managers, region managers, over park managers across my whole region, every one of those, I told them, will exclusively come from internal talent. And they were like, you're crazy. We have to have LinkedIn. We have to do Indeed. We always have to be hiring, because what if people leave? I said, I expect people to leave. We're going to train them to be elite, which means, of course, they're going to get recruited by other companies. Of course, they're going to get other opportunities. Our job is to have a bench of top talent who is dying to get that next opportunity. And they were scared to death that we were going to have job openings, that we would have huge gaps in our organization, which meant that they'd have to work twice as hard. And what we discovered, what they trusted me to discover, is, oh my God, the culture we built. What they discovered is that as you move up within our organization, the only people moving up in the organization are top talent, merit earning performers, which means that the AGMs in all of my franchise locations were the best sales associates and hosts, which means that the general managers came from the best AGMs, which means that the district managers were the best GMs. And by the time you rise up through the ranks, we have filtered out so many people of average and ordinary desire and only allow the top performers, that the culture is just unbelievable. It's merit, it's performance. And I'm telling you, when you surround yourself by other winners, it becomes really contagious, right? Mm-hmm. They become driven, they help each other, and it doesn't become cutthroat. It becomes an environment where they just compete. Hey, you beat me this month. Hey, hats off to you, buddy. Great job. I got you next month. That's different than trash talking behind your back, saying that the reason that you won is some, reason that they don't agree with. And so we have built a culture, and I think that is something that could be in a variation emulated by other leaders, which is why at your upper levels do you ever post an Indeed posting? Why would you go after somebody you have to, in a 30-minute interview, take a chance and hope that they didn't AI all the right answers for your interview? Why wouldn't you build a culture where your leaders are expected to mentor the next generation and you tell them that I will not post an external hire? Every future leader will come from you developing future leaders. By the way, my job is to develop you. And so now you've got a personal commitment back to those leaders that you're going to develop them. It has been such a blessing and such a fun way to build an environment. We've got over 1,000 employees in my franchise little organization, and every single AGM, GM, district, and region manager came from merit. Nobody hired off of Indeed. And so I've loved building that culture. They are now proud of that culture versus hesitant. And I don't think we would ever go back from building a merit-based program.
This is this is pointing on so many macro levels, not just micro levels within each individual branch of yours or franchise of yours. Just meritocracy in general, not to get all, meta about society as a whole, but meritocracy, it needs to come back, and it needs to be, especially in business, but in life in general, in schools, because without meritocracy, to me, it's like just chaos. It's just anarchy. And then what that does is it perpetuates averageness and below averageness and, bad moods and angry people, right? Like, it's just, to me, it's such an unlock for a business to be able to implement meritocracy and do it correctly. And then when you pair it with servant leadership, it's inevitable. It has to be.
I was talking with the CFO a week ago, and she's been in line to be the CEO for like 4 years. And every single time she's gotten passed over. And so she wanted to talk with me and get some advice, kind of understand. And one of the biggest areas that she's struggling with is, she's a CFO. Her job is to analyze numbers, not people. And I shared with her, look, at the end of the day, your best asset, your best quality can sometimes be your blind spot. You have been taught to look at the analytics, to understand the numbers, and to make decisions based on that. And at the end of the day, you've left merit off the table. And I think that's starting to hurt your ability to be viewed as a CEO, which your job as a CEO is to guide the whole organization, not just make immediate decisions. I could not agree with you more. And I'll share with you a couple of things that are, I think, really great on this topic. When you focus and really lean into this idea of a meritocracy, it's risky because that means that you might have to hire and fire some people. And here's what I share with my general managers across my organization. I am never going to stand in front of you and pretend that I can teach you how to interview and hire the right person. It's too difficult of a skill. You're going to sit in front of somebody for 45 minutes to an hour. You're going to ask them some generic questions. They're going to use AI to prep for your interview. They're going to look you up in LinkedIn. They're going to come in knowing every question you're potentially going to ask, and your ability to navigate through that. If you think I'm good enough as a leader to teach you how to hire right, I tell my team, I am going to teach you how to hire based on traits. I want you to look for personality. I want you to dig into questions that have insight into their drive, their goals. What are their passions? When they're having a bad day, what makes them show up to work versus just sitting at home and watching Netflix? Like, I'm going to teach you how to interview based on the person, not the skill set. And again, my team would look at me like, that makes no sense. We need to ask them like how they can do Word and what their ability to prepare for a meeting, their ability to build a PowerPoint presentation. I said, no, we will be good enough to teach them those skills once they're hired. We're going to hire great people. And then we will teach them how to be in our organization. And so what I taught my team, as I said, we're going to retrain how we bring people on board to this organization. We're going to look for great people with drive, with passion, with the right presence when they walk into our doors. And we are going to learn how to fire quickly. And they were like, well, I mean, does that mean that we're just going to be jerks? No, we're not going to be jerks. We're going to hire quickly because we want to bring the right people on board. And it is a disservice if you think that once we hire someone and realize that they aren't the right person, that you think you can change a person's personality. You're going to make them more bubbly. You're going to make them have better drive. You're going to help them overcome some past issue. Like, that is not our job. Our job is to find the right people. And so what I really help my team understand is that we are going to get great at hiring great people. And within the first 90 days, if they're not the right person, there is no bad feelings. We're going to wish them the best. We're going to respectfully shake their hand. And we're going to say, look, it's our fault. We thought this was a great match. It just doesn't work out between the culture and what we thought we were going to doing. We mean no ill will. We want to wish you the best on your next career, but we're going to shake your hand and we're going to actually, exit you out from the organization today because we want to find the right person for this business. And so my team learned really quickly, we do not invest a ton of time in interviews. We interview, we look for the right person, we bring them on board. If they're not the right person, we shake their hand, we wish them the best. If they are the right person, oh baby, do we lean in. Now it's time to be shoulder to shoulder. Now it's time to get them excited about merit. Now it's in time to introduce them to all the top performers in our organization that they can mentor underneath. But that's how you build culture, by getting the right hires, and you get rid of the bad apples versus a PIP. Let's build a PIP. Let's put a performance improvement plan in place to help Johnny be a better part of the organization. Maybe Johnny wasn't meant to be in this organization. Maybe it just isn't the right fit for him. And if you can help identify that in the first 90 days, it's so much better for them and it's so much better for you. But I think what happens is that managers take it personal. I worked really hard to interview this person. I really thought this was the right one. I thought she was going to be, and so it becomes personal. I failed. I didn't interview them correctly, or maybe I didn't onboard them the right way. Maybe the orientation didn't set the right expectation, which, by the way, I do expect my team to do all of that at a very high level. This does not in any way excuse laziness, but it's not your fault. It's just not the right fit. They don't have the drive or the desire or the interest to help our organization with our goals, and that's not your fault. I'm okay with it, and I think sometimes your managers have to hear that from you. I would literally sit in front of my general manager, and I would say, it's not your fault. You didn't interview badly. This wasn't a bad hire, and I trust you that it's time to shake their hand and let them exit, but it's not your fault. Go get me a rock star now. And so I think letting them hear that from you is so like, okay, this isn't going to be on my performance review. He's not going to fire me because I hired the wrong dude. I will fire you because you keep the wrong person in the organization. That is now a metric that I lose trust in you as a leader. And so I think being able to articulate that to them starts pulling threads in their mind of, I understand what we need to build here. I understand that I'm trusted as a leader to bring on people, but I'm not perfect. I won't always hire the right person. I understand this thread that I got to lean in, but I only need to lean in to the right people that want the right culture. And so that's, I think, what people start getting excited about, that they go, I'm not leaving this organization. I'm going to be here for the next 5 years. I'm going to be here I want to be a part of this. This is great. And it's been really fun to see them grow into that.
Well, and tell me if you agree with this, but I think that when your leadership team and even your employee team, when they are winners and when new people come in and they are surrounded by winners and they recognize that and they are inspired by those winners and it challenges them to be even better, to become a winner. If they, it could be a 16, 17-year-old kid, it might be their first job. They haven't been around winners, right? Maybe they don't come from athletics where they were around winners and on good teams and great coaches. Like, not everybody gets that, right? But I think that when you're surrounded by winners, the people who are inspired by that and then they level up to get to that level, I think, tell me if I'm wrong, but that's probably a really quick way to understand whether or not you have the right personality fit in that specific person who's a brand new hire.
I'll make a statement I think super contrary. I think everybody can go right now. You could go Google it, and you're going to see 15 articles on why this new generation coming up is a bunch of losers. And these new people that want to be managers, they have bad work ethics and they don't show up and they don't care. I completely reject that mindset. I think they quit because they no longer accept the culture that was okay 20 years in business. And 20 years in business, it was, you have to be loyal to the company because we're paying you a salary. And so you better show up and you better do your job. And we're in charge. And if you don't like it, we're going to put you in a performance improvement plan, right? That was the culture. And by the way, that was perfectly okay. There was a contract back and forth. I pay you a salary, that's what you get. What I think is contrary, where I differ completely, is I think these young leaders coming up right now, they reject that. And they say, I am not going to put myself in an environment that doesn't care about me, that doesn't treat me with respect, and just only gives me a W-2 paycheck. And that's my value to the organization. When this generation comes into an organization that doesn't operate that doesn't treat them like a W-2 employee, doesn't treat them like they've got like, don't talk to management when they come in. You stand over here, don't look at them. Or when management comes in, you make it a song and dance, a pomp and circumstance. Let management's coming in next week. Everybody clean the store, make sure it's perfect. You get these environments that they can see through that. But when they come into an environment where they go, every day we run at a high level, doesn't matter if manager walks in or not, this is how we do things. We don't run away or hide from our general manager. Our general manager helps us get better every single day. And I don't talk bad about my coworkers. I freaking learn from my coworkers that are really good at their job so I can be better at my job. I have found that this generation is actually better because they buy into that. And they go, well, I'm not going somewhere else. I'm staying here because I like this. And oh, by the way, they tell their friends. Half of the hires that we've brought on board to some of our leadership positions that have grown up within the company came from a hire that went, I've never worked in an organization like this. I love it. You guys push me. It's not easy. There's a standard of excellence. Like, oh my God, like we work hard, but I love it. Can I introduce you to a friend who's working down the street at this business or who's, over here? Could I introduce you? And we love that. But that's, I think, what gets contagious is that they go, so I reject the idea that these up and coming leaders don't get it. What I think is the mindset is that we have decided an easy excuse, which is this generation doesn't get it. No. This generation does get it. They just reject the way businesses used to run. And they expect a business and an owner that cares about them, who's involved in the business, who knows what they're talking about, and wants to build a meritocracy around them to be successful. I actually have found they love that type of environment.
This has all been amazing. Josh, I know we're up against time here. You've helped us cover so much ground with everything today, and just as a parting thought, I think that, obviously what you're doing at Sky Zone and Cloudbound, it has paid incredible dividends, not just for you, but for Sky Zone. And think of all the tons of employees who have worked for you, with you, who do currently, they seem to be in an incredible place and doing incredible things. So I want to thank you, first of all, for coming and sharing your time and knowledge with us and it being so inspirational. But I also want to make sure that anybody out there listening today, if they want to learn more from you, if they want to get in contact with you, if they want to find out more from you or more about Sky Zone and Cloudbound, what are all the best ways to do so?
I love it. I learned early on in my career to listen to people sharing ideas like this. I grew so much. So I appreciate you facilitating and letting people be a part of this community, Brien. It's absolutely fantastic. I've never taken the approach that just grinding harder is the answer. I've always taken the approach that you have to have a framework that you follow. And so I've learned over the years that framework. My LinkedIn obviously is a great way to connect with me. I have a website called presenceonpurpose.com. And that's really what I've done is I've taken all my years, everything I've learned from other people, from myself, from my trials, from all those hardships, and we've bottled up and said, what's the framework that can be duplicated and applied in business, whether it be an entrepreneur or a C-suite executive or a mid-level manager? Where do I fall? And how can I plug into a framework that's duplicatable? And I hate the idea when gurus and fancy people say, well, just work harder. I disagree with that. We all work hard. We're all focused. We're all driven. You need a framework. You need a structure to help you understand what working harder looks like and how it can be applied. And so I'd love to connect with people on, obviously, my LinkedIn. I'd love for them to discover that framework that we've put together for my team, which can now be available for others through presenceonpurpose.com. But at the end of the day, I want to pay it forward. I love developing the next generation of leaders because I sat in that chair and I learned from great leaders. At the end of the day, your presence and how you show up to overcome whatever the situation that you're in, I think we need more leaders that show up every single day. And I'm excited to help build that.
That's awesome. Well, Josh, thank you so much again. This has been such a pleasure hanging out with you today. And we wish you nothing but the best this year and far beyond.
Outstanding. Love it. Appreciate it. Let's grow, boys. Let's grow, girls. Thank you.